Tonight on our incredible panel, we have Sierra Lambert, also known by her stage name Queen Joe, QJ. She is a lyrical firebrand whose artistry is amplified by her role as house MC for many events throughout the city of Philadelphia. Cleopatra's Rapture marked Queen Joe's 2014 debut, crowned Philadelphia's Best New Artist of the Year. Queen Joe played her first major gig at the Firefly Music Festival the same year. Ms. Lambert also serves as a co-chair of Philadelphia's Arts and Culture Task Force, helping to raise 2.5 million in grant money for artists and securing the nightlife mayor position for the city of Philadelphia. That ties directly into what we're talking about, but that will help me segue to Mr. Raheem Manning, Philadelphia-based business development professional with years of experience spanning entrepreneurship, civic engagement, marketing, and advertising, along with arts and culture advocacy roles in the city, and is the city's first nighttime economy director. We have the Cheryl L. Bradford, a NAACP Image Award nominee for Dark Girls, and she is currently based in Los Angeles, California. As a production manager, line producer, and producer, Cheryl has worked on countless film, TV, digital projects, including 17 independent features. And clearly, we know that that is no minor undertaking. Ms. Bedford also founded Women of Color Unite, a 501c3, which purpose is to help women of color get hired, their projects funded, and their content distributed. Stephanie Renee is an award winning broadcast producer, writer, filmmaker, grassroots organizer, and message crafter with over 30 years of experience in entertainment, journalism, and public policy. She is the former program director and on air host of The Mojo, a WURD Radio Philadelphia. For WURD Radio Philadelphia. And while at the station, launched WURD Backstage, a video interview series featuring notable stars of stage and screen, introducing pianist Jason Moran, trumpeter Irvin Mayfield, and Golden Globe award winning director Ava DuVernay. So we have an incredible panel. We have heavy hitters that are known locally and worldwide, and the breadth of knowledge that they bring in their both their professional and personal lives, but their overall passion for the arts and the ways in which they have dedicated their time and their service to this work.
Where we were in our careers, among many other things. We wanted to talk a little bit more specifically about things that were impacting us, and we had no real information or data on that specifically. And so the decision was made by SIF members to talk about what the needs are for women of color filmmakers and media makers in our region, from our region. We know, some of us know, many of us, and some of you may not know tonight, the DEI challenges that face our sector, specifically Hollywood's diversity program problems. Sorry, diversity programs is more what they need, but their diversity problem. For example, of the top 252 Hollywood films that were released in 2021, only about 13% were written by women of color and 9% were directed by women of color. And also the independent media, film and media spaces have very similar struggles. So of the top 10 film festivals in North America, Tribeca, including Toronto, Sundance, and South by Southwest, only 12% of those directors were women of color. And so we wanted to better understand, because there had been recent surveys and studies about the state of arts and culture in our region, like the Arts and Culture Task Force report that came out in March of 2021, and the State of Women and Girls in Philadelphia that was produced by the city in 2017. There was no specific information or database about women of color filmmakers and media makers. And so women of color that I know who have been doing this much longer than I have, I felt like we're mid-career or seasoned. It was the case. It was only the case that about 16% who considered themselves mid-career. So that's 10 years plus of experience filmmaking, media making. We're still trying to get their first or second feature length project made. And that can be a problem for a lot of us, because to be 10 plus years in your field of work and not able to make your feature, when features are typically what define our careers, what give us the ability to move on, to garner more money for projects, to be able to improve our quality of lives, was troubling for me to find out. Given the percentages that we heard earlier about some of the falling in between about the 9 to 12% bracket with regard to Hollywood, with regard to, some of the larger indie film spaces and media spaces, that those DEI issues persisted here, persisted with those who are from our region, whether they worked here or other places. So about 63% had encountered problems working in film and media because they identified as women. And about 71% felt like they had encountered problems working in film and media because of their race and ethnicity.
And let's talk about Ebony. You did a great job with your statistics. Her 42 are actually backed up by our 5,500. You can go to Woke U. You can check it out. So don't think that because it's 42, your statistics are right in line. You did a fantastic job. Now listen to me, Philly. Everything should go to women of color, but more specifically, Black people, because there's a reason that things are BIPOC, right? Black, Indigenous people of color. That is because our entire economic system is literally built on the backs of enslaved African, built on the land of the Indigenous, and all other people of color have benefited from those two things. Everything should go to these marginalized filmmakers. Everything. In the state of California, when a company is run by a woman of color, profits go up by as much as 30%. So why aren't more companies run by women of color?
Thank you.
One of the only males, maybe on there, that's on the call, and we're talking about issues that are affecting women and women of color. So I like to always be very careful being like a different voice in that room, right? I don't want to misspeak or misunderstand some of the things that you guys go through. But what I wanted to do is when I read through the report, a couple of things stick out, right? Of course, with the work that we did on the Art and Culture Task Force, we've covered a lot of similar things. So I love that the report went hyper local to women of color in film. And I saw that, of course, 89% of the women of color in film here did not receive support from the city, which I think, of course, is something that we're continuing to uncover as we dive into art and culture and nightlife and things that are specifically drivers of people, entertainment, and money to the city. The city does not
triple bottom line
that way.
Right? It is more important to me about the health and the wellness of the city of Philadelphia, the suburbs, like where I am sitting in Bucks County, but this region, it is more important that the region is strong and healthy so we stop losing talent. These kids come out of film school. We can't hire them because I'm spending 6 years trying to raise money for a film that is not done. And you think I'm going to make another film? I have an A-list person who told me I could tell their story. I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. We need her story. And those of you who've been involved in a program that I did before, you know who I'm talking about. I don't know at this point that I could still tell her story, but I can tell you that documentary has not been made. She deserves that documentary. But I would never, ever, ever, ever go through what I'm doing again. I will get this film over the finish line. But unless my film is fully funded, because you know what? That's what the white folks do. The white folks that understand the business don't start anything until they're fully funded.
I mean,
we can't get
an uncapped credit, and we need, specific cutouts for our locals.
Yeah.
And we know that, and, we're doing our best.
Well, how can we take the information we have to help armor you and Josh in the fight ahead? Because I was there when Sharon was testifying in like 2000. We were all asked.
It's 2022.
Yeah, the actors were all asked to come in and support and show our strength. And I think that we have to tie it to the resources that are paid out to artists living under the poverty level that would be impacted if there was more work here. I think it has to be dollar to dollar. And I mean, look, you guys have been doing this forever, but if there's a way that you can get our info, like if we can support in some way, because something has to change. I mean, I've been hopeful for years, for decades.
Gianna, I know.
For decades. And so I'm no longer willing to be hopeful. Tell us what we need to help change the hearts and minds and paint the financial picture that it's not a Hollywood write-off, because that's always the argument we hear.
Well, part of the issue that we've had is there's no longer a Pennsylvania Film Office per se. It's all, DCED, and it's all about job creation and economic impact. And so we need more money in the pot so that that's not the only thing that they're judging. We don't have control over who gets these tax incentives. And it's sort of, we don't know what the system is. We have like an outline, but they don't share. So we need uncapped money, and hopefully Josh Shapiro is going to give it to us. So, I hope this recording is going to be available. I wish even more there are notes, because there were some incredible things said tonight. If there are notes, that we could share, I would just love to be able to do that when he's in a position to pay attention to it.
Encourage you to
we'll
sit
get
with this report. This information now exists, right? So when we think about framing a conversation, we talk a lot about receipts. SIFT has, found a wonderful woman of color maker to spend and invest so much of her time to compose all of this data and information. And then how are we now empowered when we're having conversation, when we're looking to amplify and support makers, when, it also helps to free up bandwidth, right? Now that this comprehensive report exists, we can be exactly what Ebony really, I feel like her call to action was, to be results oriented, to be solutions oriented. We've compiled this data, and we're sure that in some ways you will see yourself somewhere in here. And that if you don't, we encourage you to share your stories on social media. You can hashtag or tag SIFT in it, because we want to have space for us to share our stories, but also we want to use the energy that we have and these brilliant minds that are here tonight to think forward, to think how next steps.